50,000 enough to travel northern Nigeria? Do you need 100,000 naira, 200,000 naira, or do you need to have 1,000,000 naira to travel around northern Nigeria? Today, I'm breaking down what you should budget from accommodation, transportation, food, and other activities. And I'm going to show you what kind of trip each budget is going to get you. Because I know for a lot of people, the moment you hear about travel, you start thinking about flights, expensive hotels, activities, private cars, restaurants, and all the money you're going to need before you can even leave your house. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people don't explore their own country. They feel like I don't have enough money to travel. But how much money do you actually need? I've traveled around northern Nigeria. So in this video, I'm going to break it down for you realistically. We are going to talk about transportation, accommodation, foods, activities, access fees, and the kind of destinations you can actually visit based on your budget. And I'm not going to just throw one figure at you and say, this is how much you need to travel, because that's not how travel works. Your budget depends on where you're going, where you're coming from, how you're getting there, where you're staying, and the kind of experience you want. So let's break it down. The first thing you need to think about when planning your trip is transportation, because that's one thing that determines how much you're going to spend. And I want to give you a real example. Let's say you're traveling from Abuja to Bauchi. The public transportation can be less than 20,000 naira, depending on the transport company and the current fare. But if you prefer a more comfortable option, you can book a private car service where you are sharing the car with other passengers. Some of these cars takes about 3 passengers, and the total cost can be between 45,000 naira to 48,000 naira, depending on the service. So already you can see that there is no any fixed amount that anybody needs to travel with. It all depends on your budget and the kind of experience you want. And it's the same thing when you're traveling to other states across northern Nigeria. You might have a cheaper transportation option, or you might want to pay more for a private transportation service because you want more comfort, privacy, or just flexibility. And if you're traveling in a group, friends or family, you can split the cost, which can make the trip much more comfortable per person. So when you're planning your trip, don't just ask how much does transportation cost. Ask yourself, what's my budget and what kind of transportation works for me? Because you don't necessarily need to pick the most expensive means of transportation to have a good trip. Now let's talk about accommodation. This is one area where people automatically assume they need a very expensive accommodation. You don't. If your main goal is to explore a destination, you don't necessarily need to spend 50,000 naira or 100,000 naira every night on a room. There are budget hotels and guest houses in many states in northern Nigeria. Depending on the destination and the standards you're looking for, you can find accommodation from 10,000 naira to 30,000 range. But please don't take that as a fixed price everywhere, because hotel prices change from place to place and over time. And you know, if you're traveling with someone you trust, sharing a room can also reduce your cost. So you see, if a room costs 30,000 naira and 2 people share it, that's 15,000 naira each. But there's something I want you to consider when choosing your accommodation. Don't just choose your hotel because it's cheap. Look at the location, look at the reviews. Think about security, and think about how easy it is to get around from your location. Because sometimes you save 5,000 naira on a hotel and end up spending like 10,000 naira on transportation to get to a certain location, which doesn't make much sense. Simply because your hotel is far away from everywhere you are trying to visit. So sometimes paying a little more for a well-located hotel can actually save you money. Now let's talk about food. And this is one area I think people overestimate how much they need. You don't need to eat at expensive restaurants throughout your entire trip. You're traveling around northern Nigeria, there's food everywhere. And honestly, one of the best parts of traveling is experiencing the local food. You can eat local meals, street food, regular restaurants, everyday food without spending a fortune. If you're traveling on a budget, you could work with something between 5,000 naira to 10,000 naira per day, depending on your eating habits and the destinations. If you want hotel breakfast, expensive restaurant, drinks and snacks throughout the day, obviously you're going to spend more. But honestly, if you're trying to travel on a budget, you don't need to eat like someone who is on a vacation in Dubai. Eat like a traveler who wants to experience the place. And based on experience, some of the best meals you will have won't be the expensive ones. Sometimes it's that small restaurant you randomly discover that you end up remembering. Now, let's talk about activities, because that's where your budget will either stay small or be very expensive. You can travel somewhere and spend very little just exploring the destination. Or you can decide that you want a private guide, a boat ride, a special experience, or several different activities, and suddenly your budget doubles. But here is something I think makes traveling around northern Nigeria very interesting and a bit different. A lot of the attractions are relatively affordable, and in some cases, they are completely free. You can visit a beautiful natural location, historical sites, cultural attraction, or simply explore a destination without paying a huge entrance fee. And most times, there is not even a specific amount you are expected to pay. You can simply appreciate the securities, guides, or the locals who are helping you to have a good experience. Of course, there are attractions where you will have to pay an entrance fee, and there are activities that can cost extra. But don't just assume that every attraction is automatically going to take a chunk of money from your travel budget. And that's why I think Northern Nigeria is the best destination to explore on a budget. You can spend more of your money getting to the destination and enjoying the experience rather than paying hundreds or thousands of naira just to enter a place. So when you're planning your trip, make your research. Know the specific attractions you want to visit. Find out if there are additional activities you want to do. And also importantly, find out if you need any permission or access to visit or to film there. Then include that in your budget. Because sometimes you may be surprised by just how little you actually need to experience a place. And if you're a content creator like me, your budget can completely be different. Most times, I'm not just paying to enter a location. Sometimes I need a guide. Sometimes there are filming or access arrangements. Sometimes I'm paying for food just for content that I don't even get to eat. And sometimes there are other logistics involved because I'm not just visiting the place. I'm also creating content from the experience, which might take longer time. So don't compare your budget with somebody else's without understanding what they are actually paying for. What someone spends on a trip, they have nothing to do with what you personally need to spend. Now, let's get to the question you probably clicked this video for. How much money do you really need? Let's start with 50,000 naira. With 50,000 naira, I won't advise you to plan a luxurious long-distance vacation. But you can absolutely have a travel experience. That kind of money if you choose your location carefully, especially if you're traveling somewhere relatively close to where you live. Using affordable transportation and keeping your accommodation and activities modest. It could work for a very careful planned short trip. But the most important word here is planning. Because 50,000 naira can disappear quickly when you're traveling. Now let's move to 100,000 naira. That gives you more flexibility. Depending on where you're going or where you're traveling from, 100,000 naira could potentially cover your transportation, food, and a few activities for a short trip. Even though you may not be able to say yes to everything, but you can have a proper travel experience. And honestly, if you're someone who probably never explored northern Nigeria before, and you want to start from somewhere, that's the kind of budget I will encourage you to start planning around. Then you have 200,000 naira and above. Now you have significantly more breathing room. You can consider destinations that are farther away. You can choose more comfortable accommodation. You can do more activities and you have room for unexpected expenses. And if you're traveling with other people and you're splitting some of the costs, that money can stretch even further. But here is something I really want you to understand. Having more money does not automatically mean you're going to have a better trip. It's possible someone who spends 60,000 naira can have a better experience than someone who spent 300,000 naira. The difference is planning. So where can you actually go depending on your budget? My advice is to start from destinations that are relatively accessible to you from where you live. For example, if you're in Bauchi, you already have places like Yankari Game Reserve and other destinations within the Northeast that you can explore without necessarily starting with an expensive flight. If you're somewhere else in Nigeria, look around you. What destinations are within a few hours where you can quickly drive in? What places have you always wanted to visit but kept postponing? You don't have to start by saying, I want to travel to 5 different states. Start with one destination, one trip. You could make it a weekend trip. You could go with your friends. You can take your family. Or you could even take yourself somewhere for the day. Because travel doesn't always have to mean boarding an aeroplane. And there is one thing I don't want you to forget when you're planning your budget. Always have an emergency buffer. Please don't calculate your trip down to the very last naira. If you calculate that your trip is going to cost 80,000 naira, don't leave home with exactly 80,000 naira. Because things happen, transport fares change. You might need to take another vehicle. You might suddenly get hungry and need food. You might have an unexpected entrance fee. Something can happen. So if you can, have some money set aside that you don't touch unless you absolutely need it. Because nothing ruins a trip faster than being stranded in a place without money. So here is a simple formula I want you to remember whenever you're planning a trip. Think about your transportation, add your accommodation, add food, add your activities, add any access or guide fees, and then add some emergency money. That's your actual travel budget. Don't start with your dream destination. Start with your budget. If your budget is 50,000 naira, start with destinations that 50,000 naira can work. If you have 100,000 naira, find destinations that fit that budget. If you have 200,000 naira, then your options become wider. That's much better than choosing a destination first and then stressing yourself looking for money to make the trip happen. So how much money do you really need to travel northern Nigeria? To be very honest, you don't need to be rich. You need to be realistic. You need a plan. And you need to understand that the cost of travel depends on where you're going, where you're coming from, and the kind of experience you're trying to have. For some people, 50,000 naira can be enough for a short local adventure. For someone else, 100,000 naira might be a best starting point. And if you're traveling farther or you want more comfortable experience, 200,000 naira and above gives you more breathing room. But please don't wait until you have 500,000 naira sitting in your account before you explore. Start where you are. Look around you. There are beautiful places across northern Nigeria that many of us haven't seen yet. And if you've always wanted to travel, but money has been the thing stopping you, I hope this video has shown you that you can start small. You don't have to see everything at once. You can pick one destination, set a budget, plan properly, and go. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe because I'm going to be sharing more practical northern Nigeria travel content. Where to go, how much things cost, what to expect, and how to actually plan these trips without wasting your money. And tell me in the comments, what's the biggest amount you've ever spent on the trip within Nigeria? I will see you in the next video.